Hi, how are you? I hope that you're doing well. Very quickly, I would like to share some thoughts that have been going through my mind concerning the importance of managing relationships in your life, whatever facet of life, whether it's at church, whether it's at school, whether it's in your community, and all. Firstly, a lot of people think that when you get a degree or a master's degree or a PhD, then that's going to automatically, keyword here is automatically catapult you to where you want to go. While it's a big component of your progression, if you are a career person, the way you manage your relationships is very, very crucial because relationships can do for you what a degree can never do for you. And when we have five people, or three people, or seven people, whatever it is, that can do the same job to the same extent in terms of proficiency or competency, it usually boils down to the relationship now between you and the employer or whoever is involved is engaging in that activity. Excuse me. So one, look at institutions as people. Don't look at institutions as buildings or cars or computers that make up that institution. It's people, real people of flesh and blood. What do I mean? When you look at FNB as a bank, when you look at Atlas Mara as a bank, when you look at ABSA as a bank, you should not think of ABSA as a building and the offices. You should think of ABSA as real human beings. So ABSA is real human beings. Why is this important? I'll give you a very quick example. When thieves broke into our home in 2020, they stole several items. They stole the TV, they stole a laptop, they stole some stuff from the car, and then they also stole my keyboard. I wanted to replace the keyboard because I'm not a TV person really, and we are not TV people. But I wanted to replace my keyboard. So I went into town, checked the prices of the keyboard, and keyboards are quite expensive. Even lower ends are quite costly, 5,000, 10,000, and whatnot. So I quickly called one of the managing directors of an organization in Zambia. It's not a Zambian organization necessarily, but then because I knew the CEO, I called the CEO and asked if he could give me some money because I didn't have ready cash at that point. And I didn't want to first organize my funds and then come back to town in congestion. So I quickly called and said, I need some cash. And guess what he told me? He said, okay, where are you? I told him the location where I was and where I wanted to get the keyboard. And he said, okay, go to this branch. I'm going to call the manager there so that they can give you whatever, 10,000 and something like that. Just like that. So I wasn't going to get their personal money necessarily, but I was going to get money from this organization under the direction of this CEO. So if I had looked at that institution as an institution, I wasn't going to get that money. But because I had a relationship with this person, I could reach out to them and they would help me. So the next time you look at Levy Mall and there's an empty shop there, you should have it at the back of your mind that there are real human beings who can make a decision about whether, if you don't have all the money to pay for that shop, real human beings that you can speak to and real human beings who can say you will finish paying later. Recently, when I was working in Kenya, some manager reached out to me and said, I met a young man, he mentioned your name, and I'm looking to get some positions and do some of the activities. Do you think he is reliable? So this guy's ability or possibility of being employed or not depended so much on what I was going to say to this person. Why? Because as my boss would say, relationship capital is very important. How you manage your relationships is really, really crucial. Another quick one was some time back, I was supervising a team, and one of my direct reports, one of the people I was supervising, applied for a job in another town, which is okay. All of us, have to take care of our careers. So it was perfectly fine, no qualms about it. It's his career, he applied, and I think that he was not obliged to tell me and get permission from me. I don't think he was. So that was perfectly fine. So he applied for this job, and it landed at the desk of someone who was with me in class at university. So this guy picks up the phone and calls me and says, "Hey, how are you? Somebody from your organization." He didn't know that I knew this person and that he was my direct report. He was reporting to me. He says, "Do you know anything about this person? What can you tell me?" All this was going in the background, unbeknown to this person who applied for the job. So again, at that point, I said what I knew about this person. And what relationship capital is that even though this applicant didn't know, even though the person who was reviewing the applications, that's my friend, didn't know much about the applicant was going to borrow social or relationship capital from me. He was going to borrow credibility from me, and he was going to be employed or not employed based on the trust that the employer knows and has in me, whom he knows, so that he can use my trust to assess this candidate. So what are the implications? If you are leaving a job, live well. So don't think that because you are living in Zambia and you're going to work in Namibia or in the US, then you will never ever need the people that you're working with at the moment. The world is so small. So manage the relationship. The people that you come across, manage the relationship well. They may step on your toes. Don't overreact. As my dad would say when I was very young, he used to tell me that don't react. He used to say, but act. So the action in response to what people do to me have to be informed by my values, my principles, and my long-term goals in my career and in my personal life. So if you are a boss, don't mistreat people. There's no need. Apart from it being sinful, there's simply no need, because you are going to need those people at one point or another. And often, the battles that we win, some of the biggest battles that we win, are won in meetings where we ourselves aren't. It's other people who are defending our names. It's other people who are defending your name that are going to make or break your next career stage. There's a story in the Bible. It's in 2 Samuel chapter 9. So it's a story about Mephibosheth. It's a really, really powerful and moving story. Read it if you haven't. And quite a number of commentaries and sermons have been made and developed on it. One of them is the spiritual picture that it paints, the fact that we were alienated away from the commonwealth of God, and God brought us near him. And also very quickly, Mephibosheth was Jonathan's son, and when Jonathan and his father Saul, King Saul, were killed in battle, the nurse for Mephibosheth, when he was about 5 years old, was trying to run with him to rescue him, and then I think she dropped him, and then he broke his legs and he couldn't walk again. So he was removed from the where things were happening, so to speak. He was from a dynasty of Saul. He was a grandchild of King Saul. but because of what had happened, broke his legs and everything, so he was very far removed from royalty. So David at one point and asked his servants or the people who were surrounding him in verse 1 and said, "Is there anyone in the house of Saul to whom I can show God's kindness for the sake of Jonathan?" And that's really important. For the sake of Jonathan. So it may not be for the sake of Saul, who was hunting him down like a wild animal, but for the sake of Jonathan, his friend. And if you read Jonathan's friendship with David, Jonathan did so much for David. In fact, at many occasions, he protected David from being killed by his father, who was Saul. So David remembered Jonathan and said, "Is there anybody that I can reach out to show God's kindness for the sake of my friend Jonathan?" Why am I drawing on that story? Apart from the obvious picture, of course, that Christ brought us near him, we were far away and all. But when David brought Mephibosheth, long story short, into the palace, he promised him, "I'm going to restore all that belonged to Saul to you." Mephibosheth would have actually, felt very, very scared, I think, when he first saw David, because in those days, obviously, David was the king, and it was common to really eliminate the people that might be threats to your throne, much like what the Cameroonian president has just done. There was a coup in Gabon, there was a coup in Niger. The guy has changed the military commanders. It makes sense. So it was a common thing even in those days. If there's somebody who was threatening to the throne, you eliminated them and that's what might have been going on in Mephibosheth's mind. However, the point that I'm trying to drive there is that Mephibosheth found himself in the palace, had things restored to him, not because of himself. There are, I believe, other people who were lame, other people who needed help, other people who could have also enjoyed eating with the king, like Mephibosheth started doing. But it was the relationship that David had with Mephibosheth's father that brought Mephibosheth into the palace. Jesus Christ, at the end of time, will say to the people that didn't have a relationship with him, "Away from me, why? I never knew you." So the knowing is not so much that you watch someone on TV or you worked together, but it's the depth of the relationship. It's the relationship that exists between Christ and his people. So how are you managing your relationships? You may change jobs, go into another bank, or go into another church, or go into another laboratory. How you're managing your relationship will spell probably how far you're going to go in your career or anything, because the world is so small and it's God who brings us together. So when people step on your toes, mind the way you react and manage those relationships. When you're supervising people, when you're being supervised, mind the way you manage those relationships. Finally, when I switched from government into a non-governmental organization, 100% of my work had to do with government laboratories. Now you can imagine if I had stepped on people all over the place in government, how was I going to be employed, first of all, when I can't relate with the people I'm supposed to be working with? But secondly, how was I going to work with the people that I would have been stepping on? So you never know. Whatever job, wherever you want to go, make sure you manage your relationships and manage them well. God bless. Have a good day. Bye-bye.